Breaking news, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin just issuing a letter to Congress. He's writing that he cannot turn over Trump's tax returns to the House Ways and Means Committee, quote, until it is determined to be consistent with the law. Mnuchin says he will give House Tax Committee Chairman Richard Neal a final decision on Trump's tax returns by May 6. The Democrats were demanding President Trump release his tax returns by 5 p.m. today. That was about 40 minutes ago. Congressman Roy Estes is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, and he joins us now. So, Congressman, what are your thoughts on the demands coming from your committee and the White House reaction?
Well, I think that's inappropriate to demand the tax returns. You know, the Section 6103 was intended to help gather information to administer the tax code, make sure it was officially used and it was working correctly. It was never intended to be a witch hunt to go after any individual's tax returns, and that seems to be what's going on here. I wrote an op-ed back in December that it would be a terrible thing for the Democrats as they came into the House to start all these hearings and investigations instead of focusing on some of the good things we need to be doing. And at that time, Chairman Neal seemed to agree, but apparently the political base has pushed him to having to request for the tax returns now.
Congressman, this feels to me like a summertime sequel called Mueller Report 2. I think if these tax forms see the light of day, people will find out that the president was not a Boy Scout on his taxes his whole life, and I don't think there's a voter in America who thinks he was. What I'm wondering from you is, if we went back in time and we were still in the Obama administration, would you still feel as strongly about this defense if it were President Obama that wasn't giving his tax forms?
Well, the Section 6103 very clearly was intended to be used for administering the tax code. Now, the wording doesn't necessarily say that you can't exclude somebody's tax information, but it's used for example, when somebody's trying to analyze information, analyze quartiles of income and what taxes they're paying and percentages that may be paid for charitable contributions or deductions for taxes or mortgage interest. And those are appropriate uses of the code. But this is just really a witch hunt, is what it kind of seems like. And, you know, you mentioned the Mueller report, and it's kind of one of those things that they've been continuing investigating President Trump, and they don't want to take the truth for an answer and want to come up with a new version. And I would assume that on anybody's tax returns, they could come up with some way to say, well, he donated less to charity than somebody else did, or he used this business deduction and a lot of other people don't. And so there'd be just a ways to make a tax. But again, that never was the intent for the Section 6103.
Congressman, it's Carol Roth, and I spend far too much time on Twitter. But one thing I have learned from the people of Twitter is that they don't really care so much about Trump's tax returns because he was a businessman and they don't really care about that. What they do care about are people, congressmen, congresswomen like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi, who have been public servants who have seemed to have made a lot of money over their time as public servants. So is there any chance that some of these Congress people might show some leadership and open up their taxes first, because that's what the people of Twitter want?
Well, that's an interesting question. You think about it, Speaker Pelosi, she's third in line to the presidency, so should her tax returns be exposed too under this same assumption that's being approached? And at the end of the day, I would rather, let's make sure that we use laws the way they're intended. And for this particular purpose, it was intended to make sure that our tax code was fair to everybody, and it worked. And, you know, demanding that the president give up his tax return, granted, it's been done for the last, 40 years by presidents volunteering their tax returns, but it was never done before that, and it wasn't an expectation. And obviously, the Constitution was very clear in terms of what the requirements are to run for president, and releasing your tax returns was not one of those.
Congressman, I understand what the law was intended, and I agree with you, sir, that this is a witch hunt by the Democrats trying to find some type of dirt of where income came from, how much charitable giving was done by the president. But I also think it's a very good idea for the president to release tax returns. I understand what the law was intended, but this is the most powerful job, or at least one of the most powerful jobs in the entire world. And one of the reasons they release these tax returns is so that people understand where their income comes from, so there's no compromising of any ethics that might go forward
forward as far as being a president. What do you think going forward? Is this a good precedent being set? And would you personally, forget what the law says, would you personally like to see the president and future presidents release tax returns?
You know, I'm really not interested in seeing the tax returns of this president or any past president or future president. I remember back when Bill Clinton was president and his tax returns were released and you know, there were media stories about how much he deducted for the underwear that he contributed to charity, and that's just not what we really need from the standpoint of how do we manage our tax returns. I know from my standpoint, and from other elected officials' standpoint, we have a process to do financial disclosures and include in those forms what information we have, how much we earn from outside sources, and what assets we own, and that's open and transtransparency. And I'm very supportive of transparency. Yeah. I think we need to do that.
We should mention, by the way, that the president, the IRS is required by law to monitor the president's tax returns on an annual basis. They don't go back, but while he's president, they do monitor his returns. We have some new breaking news, Congressman. I just wanted to ask you about it. Nancy Pelosi was at this Time Inc. gathering of the 100 most important people of all time, or whatever, however they want to describe it. She said that in a question and answer period that she's going to be meeting with President Trump next week to talk about infrastructure. Now, a lot of people would think, you know, it's time Congress got around to dealing with legislation. Do you think that there's going to be anything done at all between Democrats and Republicans on infrastructure?
Well, you're right. There's so many important things we need to do, and infrastructure is one of those things. I mean, we've talked about it for years. It was a big item during the campaign, and it seemed to be something that both Republicans and Democrats focused on, and could be something that we could address. Obviously, there's lots of things there we need to do, whether it's roads and bridges, but also broadband and water and wastewater treatment facilities. There's a lot of things that we need to rebuild in this country, and we're seeing a lot of economic growth now, and we're showing that we need to make sure that infrastructure supports that. But we need to just not get caught up in all these hearings and investigations and focus on real work. You know, yesterday the Social Security trustees presented their annual report and showing that we're going to run out in 2020.
I know.
We'll start paying more out than being received, and so that's an issue that we've got to address soon as well.
Well, a lot of people don't expect to see a dime from their Social Security payments over the years. I'm one of them. I've got my money stowed away under my mattress for my old age. Congressman, great to see you. Thank you for coming in. Please come back and see us again. Appreciate it.